Hey, what's up, guys? Don Wilson here, the leader of the BC Libertarian Party and family lawyer. Thanks so much for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. Also, thanks so much to my subscribers. I've been subscribed to YouTube. Sorry, I've had a YouTube channel for many years, but really just got going in the last few months. So I'm really thankful for those of you who've clicked subscribe. If you haven't and you're somebody checking this out, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. I use this channel to share my thoughts on movies, on art, on politics, economics, and food, which is what I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about diet and about my diet. I mean, how interesting is that? The reason I want to talk about it is because about 6 months ago, I made a discovery, if I can call it that, for myself. Something that really changed my diet. Well, a discovery about diet that really changed how the effect of my diet on my life and on how it makes me feel. And that change, I mean, it's hard to describe in one word. I mean, I could point to it by saying, keto or carnivory. If any of you are my friends and follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you would have seen me posting about World Carnivore Day. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and why I'm excited about it for myself and why I share it. Because it should be obvious. I have no financial interest in carnivory or a keto diet or any diet whatsoever. I'm a family lawyer. I have no expertise as a nutritionist either, and I should say that as a professional, I can't really be advising you to follow any diet, but I can talk about what's worked for me, and a little bit about what problems I was having before, and the changes I made and the journey that I went on, and how I feel now compared to how I feel then. And if any of that's interesting to you, I can share some of the steps I've gone on along the way, and maybe it's something you can check out for yourself, or or not, take it or leave it. That's obviously going to be up to you. But basically, coming up to the spring of this last year in 2018, I was having some serious problems with food. The biggest one being that I was getting these sort of food crashes, like going into food comas after eating a lot of my meals. It started to feel like almost every day one of my meals would knock me out for an hour or 2 hours where I couldn't do anything. I felt like I had to lie down. I felt like I was almost like passing out. It wasn't quite in my head, but in my body, just completely had the energy sucked out of me. Felt like I couldn't sit up or stand up, and I wouldn't. I would lie down, for an hour or more. And, this was starting to become a regular thing. So this wasn't just 6 months ago. It was, it's been developing really over many, many months, and I think even years if I reflect on it more. So I started trying to make some changes in my diet over time. I noticed, actually I noticed this like 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, I remember I was working at this office and there was nowhere nearby for any food. There was like very few restaurants nearby at this office I was working at. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Anyways, that doesn't matter. What matters is I'd go out and go to the Subway nearby and eat a foot-long sub. And as a teenager or a 20-year-old, that was really no problem for me. I always had a massive appetite. I wasn't extremely athletic, but I played soccer and I was somewhat athletic, and I always had a massive appetite. So a foot-long sub was never a challenge for me. It never seemed like a crazy amount of food. It seems very crazy to me now. But there came a time, a few years ago where I'd eat one of those and I was done for like, the afternoon, I want to say, but like 2 hours, my energy was sucked right out of me. So that's the first time I really noticed it. So I stopped doing that, obviously. I picked up on that, stopped eating the footlongs, and never ate more than a 6-inch, and tried to eat at Subway a little bit less often. and kind of put that behind me. I eventually left that office and stopped eating at Subway. And then, fast forward to 2016, the last couple of years at the office I've been at now in New Westminster, I was eating at a fantastic sandwich place, a lot better than Subway, quite honest. It's called, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the name of it, Columbia Sandwich Shop, I think. It's right on the corner of Columbia and 6th. And I feel bad because I don't go there anymore. I'll get to that. But if you still eat sandwiches, go there. The ladies that run that place do such a great job. It's a good value, good real ingredients. It's a good amount of food for the price. You're gonna get sandwiches between like $5.50 and $8 for the super duper stuffed deluxe sandwich. So they've always good soups there, and everything's sort of put together on site. Anyway, so go check that out. But I was eating there, just having sandwiches, sometimes bagels, like a bagel sandwich, a bread-based sandwich, or lunch anyways. And again, after a while, I was definitely noticing, to a lesser extent, but, sometimes not, that I would get just knocked down by eating that. And have to take a freaking nap, for an hour. I wasn't sleeping. It wasn't about sleepiness. It's just about like something in my body was like just being sucked out of me. How many times can I say that in one video? I got to find a different way to describe that. But I don't know how else to do it. It's really what it felt like. There was like a drain, and the energy just went right down the drain. So. That was starting to become a regular thing, and then I switched to eating only whole grain breads from that place, and that helped. That definitely did help for a while. Actually, quite a lot. I think I was able to eat those sandwiches without that kind of effect by switching to like a whole grain bagel when I would eat that for my sandwich, and that did work. But I still didn't. I was having this experience eating other things. There were a lot. I looked back on my diet now, and I realized that it was a very carbohydrate intense diet that I was eating. Whether we always had a few bags of chips perhaps in the cupboard, we might have always had like one or two things of ice cream in the freezer. Not that we were eating that stuff every day, and we weren't, but once or twice a week, kind of get into something like that, and and work through a bag of chips, or once every maybe couple weeks, get into an ice cream, a tub of ice cream, and work through that. And another thing I was eating a lot was chocolate milk, or drinking a lot was chocolate milk. So looking back at it now, it makes sense to me why I was starting to get essentially pre-diabetic, which I believe is what was happening. I know I never got diagnosed with diabetes or any condition at all, and I never went into the hospital. But I didn't need to go to a doctor to know that something wasn't working with my diet. And so I think this was back in June, when I just was really getting frustrated with it and a bit scared, even to some extent, if I'm perfectly honest. Just like not knowing really what to do, because this kind of kept coming up. And on one hand, it's obvious what to do when I describe that. It's like, hey dummy, stop eating potato chips and chocolate milk and ice cream, and pasta and rice, like all these different things, because it started to be other things that I was eating that knocked me out. And it's easy enough to say, hey, stop eating that, but the question of like, okay, well, what else do I eat? I didn't have the answer to that question. So it was a very frustrating experience and stressful experience for me, because it's like, yeah, okay, I could realize that I got to stop eating some stuff like at least the chocolate milk and the chips. Although honestly, the chips, can't say I really had the energy loss experience on the chips, if I really think about it. But certainly the chocolate milk, and things like, and bigger meals that, as I realize now, were carb heavy, is what I was experiencing this. But I didn't know it was because they were carb heavy. I just was feeling like crap from eating. That's all I really knew. And so I remember this was back in June of last year, 2018, and I was just having this experience. I came home from the office, around 5 or 6 o'clock. I was hungry, even though I had eaten lunch, and I went to the fridge and grabbed a chocolate milk that I had a few of them in the fridge at all times, and I was drinking these 750 milliliters of chocolate milk size, and I drank the whole thing. I didn't always do that, okay, but that time I drank the whole thing. Within 15 minutes of finishing it, I'm like catatonic on the couch, just like in a vegetative state. My mind is barely awake. I'm just, paralyzed there with this lack of energy. And I'm just, I think that time I actually fell asleep. I had a nap, I was just like knocked so far out. I was actually knocked unconscious from what I ate. And I remember I woke up, and then, more than woke, like I woke up from my nap, and then like finally kind of got over the sugar crash or whatever it exactly was that I was experiencing. And once that subsided, once the sugar crash subsided, I was hungry. I was hungry again. And I just was like ready to pull my hair out, because it's like, what do I have in my fridge? More chocolate milk, like what am I going to do here? I can't keep doing this, right? And it was just a really frustrating experience. So, right then and there, I just made a kind of a arbitrary decision to change something up. It's like I didn't know what to eat. I'm like, okay, I gotta not eat chocolate milk, but I'm hungry, and I don't know what to eat here. I gotta make some pasta. Well, that doesn't feel right here. Something's not right here. Like, why is pasta gonna help and the chocolate milk's not helping? And you know what? For now, I'm gonna eat steak. Every time I have a craving for chocolate milk and potato chips, I'm just gonna, for now, I'm just gonna try and eat a steak. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to eat anymore. I'm confused about food. Just gonna eat some steak and bacon. Hey, I like bacon. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get some meat, and that's what I'm gonna do for now until I figure it out. Because I was kind of at a crisis. Like, it's just like I can't afford to have 2 hours out of a day knocked out of me for eating, right? I mean, it's just like, not to mention the sense of helplessness and kind of shame at like, I can't even get this right. And like, I'd like to do stuff with my time, maybe make videos or even just not be laid out. And, so I made that decision in that moment, just to like, I'll give that a try. And went to the, I went to the grocery store and bought 2 or 3 beefsteaks, some strip loins, I think, and like a couple packs of bacon. Now, like, just to give a sense that like this wasn't a regular part of my diet at all, and actually, like, reflecting on it at that time, I'm pretty sure it's the case that I had never actually purchased a beef steak before in my life, which maybe to some people is going to be crazy, and maybe to some other people isn't crazy. I was actually a vegetarian for 7 years, so there's a big chunk just taken right out. I had bought pork steaks before, and I bought chicken before, but beef steaks always had just seemed expensive to me. So, but this time, I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why I chose a beef steak this time. I really don't. I have no idea why. That's what I decided upon, even though it's not something I ever cooked in my own home, ever. I'd never bought before. So it's kind of an odd decision. Like, there was no logical or natural place for that to stem from that I could refer to consciously in my life. What was funny, I mean, just a funny coincidence, is at that night I was watching Joe Rogan interview Jordan Peterson, and that episode, not the most recent one, it's the second most recent one. I think it was 1199. Don't quote me on that, but I think episode 1199, and it was like the day it came out, or maybe the day after it came out. I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday night, and so I was in the middle of watching it. It was like a 3 hours and 20 minutes long, this interview, Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson, and I'm in the middle of that when I'm like doing this whole pre-diabetic coma and this sugar crash and like this whole crisis. I'm having this moment, and and realization that I can't keep eating the same way I'm doing, and deciding to go get the steak. So the funny coincidence is I come back and with my steaks for the first time in my life, having beef steaks in my house, and bacon is again like. Before that, I don't remember when I bought bacon. I don't want to say I've never bought bacon before, but I have no idea when that was. It would be years. I would have to say I can't remember ever buying bacon even before. But that's where I was going. I put that together, fried up some bacon, fried up a steak, and I dug into that, and I pressed resume on the Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson interview, and kept watching that and enjoyed my steak a lot, and it really hit a spot for me, which was like maybe I don't know, sign is not the right word, but it helped. I enjoyed it, and that said something to me that it was going to be good to keep eating that for a little while. And of course, in that, not of course, maybe you don't know, but in that interview, Rogan eventually starts asking Jordan about his diet, and it was in that interview at the end of it, just in the last like 20 minutes or so, that I learned for the first time that Jordan Peterson is on an all beef steak diet. Which I had never heard of before. And I heard Jordan Peterson say this, and I have a lot of respect for Jordan Peterson. I love a lot of his talks. I watch, I'm a big fan. I watch a lot of his videos, so I know he's not a moron. He's a very smart guy and not one to do something flippantly. So, but still, I mean, I thought, what the hell? This is bloody crazy. It's crazy. You just eat steaks. This can't be a thing. This can't be possible. So, that was sort of the red pill moment, for me with diet. And from there, I watched his daughter, Michaela Peterson, on YouTube, and some of the videos she was in, and talking about her story and her transition to a meat-only diet, and the kind of extraordinary changes that happened in her life physiologically. For those of you who don't know, Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela, had quite serious juvenile arthritis, to the point where by the time she was 18, she had 2 different joints replaced, and chronic pain and inflammation. She's on daily prescriptions from infancy, basically, and simultaneously, I think she was on. I don't want to say she was on. I want to say antidepressants, but now I'm not sure if I'm mixing her up with her dad, with Jordan Peterson. But so, listen to that story, and I know it's it's so easy to for someone to try to believe in a miracle cure or try to sell a miracle cure. So, go listen to her story, and judge that for yourself. It's very interesting, anyways. It certainly made it worth looking at when she had connected her condition and her inflammation and arthritis to her condition, to what she was eating over her life, and so had her parents. Like, a connection had been made, and eventually she moved to a sort of a keto diet, just fat animals, protein, fats, and greens, and then finally to an all meat diet, actually just steak and water. And the transition for her was to go from her whole early childhood, her whole life, having juvenile arthritis, like serious juvenile arthritis, to decomposing her body from the inside. Really, these joints just falling apart at 18, right? I mean, that's no way to live. I mean, and being on these daily medicines, to the point where she is now symptom-free of that, and not on any prescriptions at all anymore. So it's a pretty incredible story and a pretty incredible transformation, and certainly I thought it was worth checking out more and listening to see if what could possibly be true about that? I mean, is that even possible, right? I had to look into this more, because here was somebody whose life really, I mean, was turned around. Like, I mean, if that's true, right? Like, if it's the diet that did that, it's a literal lifesaver. I mean, it's more than a lifesaver. It's a life maker in a way, right? I mean, to go from having your body decomposing from the inside out to being able to live symptom free. I don't know. It's more than a lifesaver, if I can say that, because like living a life of pain, it's almost. I don't want to say it's worse than non-existent. I'm not going to get into it. Try to explain too much what I'm saying. What an important and powerful tool, if true, right? So I started just going down the rabbit hole YouTube of carnivory. I found Sean Baker on Joe Rogan as well, and listened to him and listened to his account as a surgeon and doing surgeries on individuals. I'm not going to remember the type of surgery, but basically through some of the surgical procedures, Sean would get to see that some patients would poop into a bag. I don't know how else to say it. All right, I'm sorry. And he found when people were, for those patients who were on a primarily animal-based diet, that there's really very little waste produced by the body, which is contrary to everything I'd ever heard about how our bodies eat animal foods. And so he was suggesting that our bodies make tremendous use of animal foods and are able to make use of almost all of it, and thus there's very little waste. So it was a long time ago I watched that particular video, and I'm just remembering where I started looking at, right, to start trying to understand what these people were doing. And I mean, what I was doing, I couldn't keep doing it anymore. I knew that. I didn't know if what these guys were talking about was a thing. I was still just looking into it. And to a point, I'm still, very interested in nutrition to this point. I'm always still looking at new modes of eating. And from Sean Baker, so I watched Sean, his interview on Rogan. I watched some of his videos on his channel, and he does a really good job of pointing to clinical trials, on the relevant issues. And then it was really then and there for the first time that I understood what keto was. And I know I had heard that name before. I remember Tim Moen was talking about the keto diet before I made understood what was going on. I remember seeing him make some posts on Facebook, and talking about having a lot of successes on it. And I was kind of just like, always very skeptical of fad diets. We've all seen those throughout our lifetimes, and they come and they go, and they're often a lot of BS mixed in with maybe some valuable information, and usually a lot of self-motivation, right? So not that I would have assumed Tim would have been into that kind of thing, but I didn't immediately I didn't really give it much credence, but it was watch sort of just going down the rabbit hole on YouTube of Michaela Peterson, Sean Baker, and then I can't really remember specifically who I found next, but I definitely started getting into a channel called High Intensity Health. Low Carb Down Under was definitely an early one, and like that was one when I got onto low carb Down Under, I was like just transfixed with that channel, and I watched like 30 hours of Low Carb Down Under, because it was really cool, because it's like doctors and scientists, and engineers and other, and sometimes just lay people, but really well researched lay people who are referencing real clinical studies talking about this thing called the keto diet. So a low carb, high animal fat diet. And I think I had all the questions I assume virtually anybody would have when starting to learn what this diet was. So the keto diet, or which is to me very closely related to a carnivore diet. There's important differences, and maybe I'll mention that a bit later. But basically, you're trying to keep carbs. You're trying to limit carbs. Some people say under 20 grams of carbs. Some say under 30 grams. Some say under 50 grams of net total carbs. Like subtracting out fiber. So you might hear different people pick different numbers for that, but the point is get your carbohydrate intake down, low, really as low as you comfortably can, and keep it in that low range. The other important piece to the keto diet is eating a lot of fat. And I guess it doesn't technically need to be animal fats to be ketogenic, but over and over, inevitably, part of the research that I was watching was about animal fats, butter and bacon and just steaks. Even there's fat even in fish. You don't think about that, but fish are fatty animals, and that's actually what is. People talk about fish being good. That's what's healthy in it, is they have healthy fish oils. That's fat, right? So a diet low in carbohydrates, under 20 grams or 30 grams or 50 grams, and then you can start keeping a lazy keto, which is maybe you're like 50 to 100 grams of carbs. If you're a hedonistic ketogenic diet, and maybe I've done that a little bit here and there, but doing that there, and then get just 80% of your calories from fat. Right, so the idea is that you're switching all of your metabolism, all of your cell metabolism from burning carbohydrates to burning products from fat. So that's the idea behind this diet. And like I said, I think there's so many questions about that when you start hearing that, because we've all been told that meat causes cancer. You need fiber to have bowel movements. You need vitamins from plants, like vitamin. You're going to be vitamin C deficient. You're going to get scurvy if you just eat steak. Let's say, like as Jordan Peterson is doing. That saturated fat causes heart disease. Those are some of the big ones. So I was naturally curious about all of those things. So I went headlong into YouTube research, and I know that sounds like it can be a fake thing, but it can also be a real thing if the people you're watching are competent authorities who are referencing real science. A scientist reporting on a clinical trial on YouTube is no less authentic than it being on a piece of paper. So there is a lot of really high quality research available on YouTube on this, and you really can get answers to those questions. And indeed, I found, unsurprisingly, that a lot of people were also very concerned about those issues as well, and tackling them head on. Whether saturated fat causes heart disease. That's a huge one, right? Like that, everybody knows that, but it turns out that the evidence for that really is not very good. And not only that, but there's a lot of evidence that's been forgotten or marginalized because of that hypothesis that saturated fat causes heart disease. There's been a lot of good science that's been marginalized, showing how important that saturated fat and cholesterol is for nutrition and healthy development. So we got this double whammy of bad advice of cutting animal fats out of our diet over the last 50 years or so. So the double whammy being, that one, we're losing this important nutrient, which saturated fat and cholesterol is an essential nutrient in itself. And then replacing it, you need to replace that energy with something. If you're going to take that fat out of your diet, you still need energy to live, and the body can only really broadly get energy from fat or carbohydrates. So if you're taking fat out, really the only other source of energy you're going to get is carbohydrates, right? So, and that's what's happened, really. I mean, and if you're not on a keto or carnivore diet and you reflect on your diet and you take a look at what you're eating, it's probably at least 50 to 60% of your calories are coming from carbohydrates, from breads and cookies and pastas and rice, starchy vegetables. And there's actually a third negative element to that, to the conventional dietary advice we've received, which is that many of the most important nutrients in terms of vitamins and minerals, let me say principally vitamins, can only be absorbed. Well, there's two things: are only available in animal foods, and can only be absorbed when they're fat soluble. Vitamin A and vitamin E in particular. I believe vitamin K2 as well. So those vitamins you can only absorb those when they are in fat. And coincidentally, I mean, it turns out it's not coincidental, but coincidentally, animal fats and animal foods are the best sources for those vitamins, and they happen to be the only way you can really get them in the quantities you need in your body. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff, so that's about the saturated fat, hypothesis, like that it caused heart disease, right? I mean, so anyways, I'm not going to go through every concern I had and what the science says about it, or what I understand the science to now say about it. But I do invite, I do want to say that, if you have those concerns about this kind of diet, that's like, perfectly normal. I think you ought to, you'd be strange if it didn't occur to you that these things, we've been told these things that are harmful about our food. So what I would say is that very intelligent people are rigorously putting themselves to the task of addressing those questions, and have, for many years or for decades. This is not I know it's entering the public consciousness now, really in the last year or so, maybe a bit more, but the science is not new, and nor is the diet new, really. So, take a look at these things. The channel, as I said, for high intensity health, is a really science-based program that talks about a sort of talks about nutrition in a scientific way. Low carb down under was another really good one. Two keto dudes. I feel Frank Tufano is another great channel. Now Frank's a carnivore, and he talks a lot about where you can get different nutrients and what animal sources of food have those nutrients, and kind of some misconceptions about some of the plants that we believe are high in nutrients, but it turns out the nutrients in a lot of those plants aren't particularly bioavailable. So they're not really, the nutrients that are in there aren't really as accessible as we thought. So those are just a few of those channels, and if you start getting into that, you'll start seeing some regular speakers and presenters, and you can start checking them out individually. Tim Noakes is one gentleman who's been doing this for a couple of decades. Nina Teicholz, whose book I reviewed a few weeks ago, The Big Fat Lie. She's a journalist who did a very readable review of the science on saturated fat. Gary Taubes is another journalist who did something similar about 10 years ago. I haven't read that book yet, Good Calories, Bad Calories, but it's very highly spoken of if you see that one and you want to learn about this. There's so many names I could point out. Ivor Cummins is another great source on this. He's an engineer and brings a very comprehensive scientific approach to this diet, if you want, and its effect on heart disease. So if you are curious about the diet, there are people who are giving scientific answers to these questions. For me, so I started on that, and now and moved pretty quickly into what I now understand to be a ketogenic diet, and within a few days of that first night, I feel like I was transitioned to fat burning, which for some people, I understand it can take 1 to 3 weeks. Maybe, in my case, I'd never been low fat. I'd just been high fat and high carb. So maybe for me, my body had, been used to eating fat somewhat. But whatever the case, those first few days, like those first 3 days in particular, I was eating steaks and bacon like crazy. I was eating, like 3 steaks a day, basically 3 steaks a day or more, and a pack of bacon basically every day at least, and then like pepperoni sticks, throughout, right? I was just hitting it super, super hard, and eggs as well at the time, and and before long, like for me, really within a few days, I found my cravings for the chocolate milk and the carbohydrates had drastically reduced. I'd say really at least by like 80%, maybe even by 90%. I just like it was like a switch, really, that's how I describe it. I felt so differently eating this way. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend just eating steaks and bacon forever, although it does seem to be working for some people. That's not what I'm suggesting, but definitely, for me, for like a transition period of not knowing what else to eat, it was better than chocolate milk and potato chips, and the junk food I was subsisting on, and the causing all these blood sugar crashes that I was getting. So if that's all you can think of, I'd say go for it. Just pound the bacon and steaks, and use that bacon fat to fry your steaks, and throw the butter, throw tons of butter on that steak, and go ahead using salt and pepper. Just eat. You do know how to eat. You've just been told that the way that you know how to eat is gonna kill you. Get some drumsticks. I went to Costco, bought a big thing of drumsticks. They're juicy. They're full of fat. They're great. Salt and pepper on them, or seasoning or spice. That's fine on a keto diet. You're just trying to get carbs down. In fact, on the keto diet, you can technically eat literally whatever you want, as long as you're under that carbohydrate limit. Now, I mean, some foods aren't great for you, but you'll still technically be on a keto diet. You can still eat ice cream every single day on a ketogenic diet. If you could have half a cup of ice cream every single day, if you just, you can't go without ice cream, there you go. For me, really, my soft spot is beer. I really like IPAs, like really like bitter, hoppy beers. But you can still drink beer every single day on the ketogenic diet. How is that possible? It's great. You just got to keep it under 30 grams of carbs. Beer has about 10 to 15 grams of carbs per can. So do the math. You could have 2 beers every single day and still be ketogenic. And I don't drink that much beer. Okay. So it's not quite as restrictive as you think. And moreover, once you switch over to eating that way, it's hard to understand, but your cravings really do change. So for me, I went right into that. I've been so happy with it because a couple major things happened. A lot of things changed for me. Like I said, it was really like a switch. So much changed in my life making that switch, and that's really why I've been really excited about it for the last 6 months or so. So, the first thing that happened is that it worked for controlling these sugar crashes, right? I was saying I was passing out all the time before. That doesn't happen anymore. That's gone. Okay, like it doesn't happen anymore. All right, I can eat to my fill, and I do every day quite regularly. Eat as much of the food I'm eating now as I want. I don't pass out on the couch ever. It's just not a thing, which is so awesome. Can't tell you how frustrating that experience was, of feeling like I was bloody dying. I'm 35 years old here. I'm not ready to, to sail off into the sunset after eating a damn chocolate milk. All right. Eating the steaks and the bacon and, these animal foods, I can eat as much as I want. And none of that just never happens, right? So that's one major thing. The other major thing is weight loss. Okay, so, really since in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been inexorably gaining weight, year after year, and over like 5 pounds here, 6 pounds there, over the last, until I made this dietary change. I'm trying to remember now, but I remember when I crossed 200 pounds, and that was, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, so if I ever say a different date, give me some freedom or room there, because I don't remember specifically. All right, so it was, what did I say? 4 or 5 years ago? Jeez. Let me just say 5 years ago, okay? I'm going to say about 5 years ago. I remember roughly crossing over 200 pounds. Going to, in high school, I'd always been about 185. And then actually, after I graduated high school, I went up above 200 as a 20-year-old, which is, crazy. I'm just, at that time, I was barely, not even 6 feet tall, and like 205. Actually, I got up to like 212 at that time, just drinking pop like this big, and eating French fries and chicken strips. And anyways, when you're 20 years old, you can lose that in like 2 weeks, and I think I did. I like lost like 15 pounds in 2 weeks by like doing a push-up or something, whatever the hell it was. And then stayed, and actually got into pretty good shape in my 20s. I was running, probably 10 kilometers a week. I was on a pretty good soccer team. I was in a good soccer club. I didn't, get to play all that much with the in the game time, but I was training with those guys and training very hard, running about, I don't know, 7 to 10K a week, let's say. I ran a half marathon in my 20s. I was down to 174 pounds at about 6 feet tall, and it was great. Anyways, I'm just giving you the history of my weight, and then around 30, I remember crossing over into over 200. I was about 195 for a few years in my late 20s, and like crossing into 30, and then I guess in my early 30s or about 30, I crossed over to 200. So and then, fast forward 4.5 years or 4 or 5 years till about 6 months ago, June, I was up to 230 pounds. Okay, and very little of that was muscle. I mean, I have some muscle, but I got not, didn't have those back then. I hardly use them now. I didn't use them at all back then. All right, there was no training going on. It wasn't muscle. I was going up to a size 38 waist. I'm a bit taller now than I was when I was 20. So I'm about 6'1". Now, so, but still getting up to 230 pounds, not good. And it was just like, it felt inexorable. It felt beyond my control. And I know, well, I thought I knew what to do about it, which was to eat less and get out and do exercise. But despite the fact that I thought I knew that, or I believed that, everybody knows how hard that is to actually do. You need a lot of self-discipline to get yourself out and every day focus on what you eat and get it into that zone of like calorie restriction and get your butt out the door and onto the track and running. I think very few people find that completely easy and natural. I certainly did not. It was not something that I was ever really able to maintain. I made tweaks to my diet throughout, and I was able to successfully constantly make small changes that were permanent. Like I used to eat, fast food. I still eat fast food, all right, but I used to eat the whole meal, and then I realized at some point, like, okay, well, at least I got to cut out the beverage and the fries, and I could just eat the burger, and this feels like less bad than the rest of it, right? So I could make those kind of changes, anyways. But I was gaining weight up to 230 pounds, and then I made this change, and switched over to to a ketogenic diet. And I was really quite strict on that for about 3 weeks, where I was really under 30 grams of carbs every single day. Just which was really hard then. Really different then. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. It was really different. It did require some focus and discipline. The easy part about the diet is like when you start feeling bad about it, you just got to go eat a steak and bacon. It's like, oh, woe is me. I'm on a diet. I have to go eat like chicken, wrapped in bacon with blue cheese or something. You know what I mean? Like you can eat any of that. So it's like really hard to feel too bad for yourself. Anyways, within I started losing that extra weight, within a couple weeks. I started shedding it. And now I got down to, I think, at my lowest about, I want to say about 204 pounds. And that was just in about 6 weeks. I lost, about 25 pounds. I wasn't tracking it that nicely, so I'm guesstimating a little bit, kind of get on the scale, be scared and then leave it for a few months and be like, oh, I'm 230 and then start this diet. Not really. I didn't know what this diet was when I started it. I just, like I said, I needed to make a change. I made a change, and then I started getting into understanding it more and understanding it could be a weight loss thing and be like, oh, that's that'd be cool if it was true. And I shed about 25 pounds. I'm sure some of it was water, undoubtedly that's part of weight loss, but I haven't bought new pants, so I don't know what, what pant size to buy now, but, I went down, like two belt, sizes, so what was that, 2.5 inches? I don't know. I lost, my waist size started shrinking. I started looking better, feeling so much better to lose that 25 pounds, man. It's just like, I didn't really realize how heavy 25 pounds can feel until 2 months later, it's gone. It's like, I felt like I could jump and run and skip. And actually, and it was after that I got this stuff behind me and at least started doing something, right? Like I felt like I had enough energy and I felt good about myself and like in control of my health a bit better, that I could like, yeah, I want to do something here, like throw some weights around and stave off the atrophy of life by throwing these around every once in a while. So definitely my energy came back up and can come back up. It arrived, with the loss of that weight, and probably the greatest thing of all of it was the sense of not being out of control anymore. And I didn't even really realize that was there before, like that feeling. But that whole time when I was putting on weight and having these blood sugar problems that were so out of control, I didn't realize how shameful I felt, how ashamed I was that this fundamental, essential part of my life was really outside of my control. I had to kind of like, I had to face up to the fact that I didn't know what to do really to lose weight. It just seemed like inexorably I was going to be losing or gaining weight, more and more weight. Sorry, I've been talking now for 49 minutes. My throat is getting a little raspy. So I will wrap this up. I did not plan for this to be that long, but the point is, I was ashamed. I was out of control of my weight and my blood sugars, and I was sort of depressed about it without being conscious of it, because I only became conscious of it once I got that stuff back within my control. And I still have some ways to go, and I still have some weight loss goals. I'm definitely carrying extra weight, and I know that blood sugar pathology doesn't get completely remedied in in a few months of eating well, after 35 years of eating garbage. Or not garbage, that's too stressful, that's too severe, but being neglectful or ignorant. After 35 years of being ignorant of what really to eat, it's not going to be turned around in just 6 months. But I feel like I know the protocol now. I know what food is now in a brand new way, and that I know I have the tools to fix the problem now. And it wasn't until I got that and I could reliably lose weight in a way that I know I can maintain. Like, I know the diet seems crazy and impossible from outside of it, and that's all fine. But for me, once I've gone into it, all this food makes so much sense to me, and especially as I start looking into like Weston A. Price, this book that I actually sat down to review here before you, and I wanted to just give a background about why I wanted to review Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, a book I read over the Christmas holidays. That was a book written in 1941. I'm going to make a separate video reviewing that because this video is now ridiculously long. But the point is, as I start reading that and watching guys like Frank Tufano and Sean Baker and start delving into real nutrition science, not just what I've been told or what the frickin' news says we should be eating or what the headlines say. Like, what do clinical studies say? What do the people who actually research it, what are their conclusions actually showing? And as I get into that, I feel like I've got a much better understanding of the nutrients that my body needs, and I feel so good to have that knowledge. So that's why I've been trying to, share that a lot on my personal Twitter pages, my Instagram, and a little bit here on YouTube. So I really hope that the information I'm sharing there is as useful to you as it has been for me, because for me it has really been life-changing to be able to, like I said, control my weight, control my blood sugars, increase my nutrient intake. And that's maybe ultimately the heart of this, really, is like that's maybe the holy grail, maybe the golden goose, is that understanding nutrient density and where and how as humans we get nutrients. That's what I've really been coming into in the last few weeks in terms of my reading and research. And I feel really good about it. So I want to share it. That's what I've been trying to do, and hopefully that gives some context for those of you who maybe follow me personally on any of those things or on Facebook as to why I'm doing that. And next video, I'm going to review, or at least summarize, Weston A. Price's Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. Thank you so much for watching this video. If any of you have watched to the end, I really appreciate your ear. I hope some of the information is useful or interesting to you. Thanks so much for watching.